Most people believe their problems come from the outside world. From money, from bad luck, from other people, but the truth is far more uncomfortable. The most powerful force shaping your life might be the way you think about yourself. There are days when you wake up, and before your feet even touch the floor, something already feels heavy. Nothing terrible has happened yet. The world hasn't collapsed, but inside your mind, a quiet voice has already started speaking. Today will probably be the same. Things never really work out for me. What's the point of trying again? And somehow, that voice feels believable. Not because you are weak, but because life has given you enough moments that slowly trained your mind to expect disappointment. Maybe you tried something once and failed. Maybe you trusted someone and got hurt. Maybe you worked hard, but no one noticed. And over time, something subtle begins to change inside you. You stop dreaming as boldly. You stop expecting good things. You stop believing that life might surprise you in a beautiful way. Instead, your mind quietly prepares for the worst. Not loudly, not dramatically, just in small thoughts that repeat every day. You start saying things like, "I'm just being realistic. I don't want to get my hopes up. This is just how life is." But here's the truth most people never realize. What you call being realistic is often just a mind that has been wounded too many times. And when a mind is wounded, it learns to protect itself. It lowers expectations. It imagines failure first. It assumes things will go wrong. Because somehow that feels safer than hoping. But this quiet habit creates a dangerous cycle. When your thoughts expect failure, your energy becomes smaller. When your energy becomes smaller, your actions become weaker. And when your actions become weaker, life begins to look exactly the way your mind predicted. Not because fate decided it, but because your thinking slowly shaped your reality. Many people spend years living inside this invisible cage. They work, they survive, they move forward. But without belief, without excitement, without that quiet inner voice that says, maybe something good is still possible. And the tragedy is not that life becomes difficult. The tragedy is that people slowly stop believing they deserve something better. They stop believing they can change. They stop believing that their story might still surprise them. But what if the biggest battle in your life is not outside of you? What if the real battlefield is happening quietly inside your own mind? Because the way you think about your life will eventually shape the life you live. And this is where the power of positive thinking begins. Not as a cliché, not as fake optimism, but as one of the most powerful forces that determines whether a person slowly gives up or slowly transforms their future. And most people never realize just how powerful their own thoughts really are. Why so many people lose their positive thinking. If positive thinking is so powerful, why do so many people lose it? Why do so many people start life hopeful, curious, and full of dreams, but slowly become more doubtful, more negative, and more tired as the years pass? The answer is not because people are weak. The answer is because life quietly trains the mind. Think about how most people grow up. As children, we believe almost anything is possible. A child can fall 10 times while learning to walk and still try again an 11th time. A child can dream about becoming an astronaut, a singer, a scientist, or an inventor without worrying about how difficult it might be. But somewhere along the way, that fearless way of thinking begins to change. Maybe it starts in school. A teacher says, "You're not really good at this." Maybe it happens at home. Someone says, "People like us don't succeed at things like that." Maybe it happens in early adulthood. You apply for a job and get rejected. You try to build something and it fails. You trust someone and they break that trust. None of these moments seem huge on their own, but the human mind keeps a quiet record of experiences. Every disappointment, every rejection, every time effort didn't lead to the result you hoped for. And slowly, your brain begins to build a conclusion. Maybe I'm not the kind of person things work out for. This belief doesn't arrive suddenly. It grows quietly over time, like a small seed that slowly becomes a tree. And once the mind believes something, it starts looking for evidence to prove it right. If one opportunity fails, the mind says, "See, I knew it." If something goes wrong, the mind whispers, "Of course it did." This is not because people want to think negatively. It is because the brain is designed to protect us from disappointment. Psychologists call this negative bias. Your brain is naturally wired to notice danger, failure, and problems faster than it notices hope, opportunity, or success. Thousands of years ago, this helped humans survive. If our ancestors ignored danger, they didn't live very long. But in modern life, this survival mechanism creates a hidden problem. Your brain becomes very good at imagining what might go wrong, and very slow at imagining what might go right. So even when opportunities appear, the mind hesitates. Even when things are improving, the mind doubts. Even when life offers another chance, the mind quietly says, "Don't get too excited." And after enough time, something subtle but powerful happens. People stop failing because they try. They start failing because they stop trying at all. Not lewdly, not dramatically, just slowly. They stop applying for opportunities. They stop starting new things. They stop believing their effort could change anything. And this is where the real danger of negative thinking appears. It doesn't destroy your life overnight. It slowly shrinks it until the life you are living becomes far smaller than the life you were capable of creating. But here is the part many people never hear. Your mind may have been trained to think negatively, but it can also be trained to think differently. And that change often begins with something surprisingly small. A shift in perspective, a new way of speaking to yourself, a different way of interpreting failure. Because once your thinking changes, your energy changes. And when your energy changes, your actions begin to change too. And that is where transformation quietly begins. How positive thinking actually begins. When people hear the phrase positive thinking, many immediately misunderstand it. They imagine someone forcing themselves to smile when life is clearly difficult. They imagine pretending the problems don't exist. But real positive thinking is not about pretending. It is about choosing a different relationship with reality. Because life will always contain problems. Disappointments will still happen. Plans will still fail sometimes. Positive thinking does not eliminate these things. What it changes is how you respond to them. And that difference quietly changes the direction of your entire life. Let's start with something simple. The way you speak to yourself. Most people don't realize how harsh their inner voice has become. When something goes wrong, the mind immediately says, "I messed everything up. I'm not good enough. I should have known better." But imagine something for a moment. Imagine a close friend came to you after failing at something important. Would you say to them, "You're useless. You'll never figure it out"? Of course not. You would probably say something like, "It's okay. You tried. You learned something from this. You can try again." Yet the kindness we easily give to others, we often refuse to give to ourselves. Positive thinking begins when you start speaking to yourself with the same understanding you would offer a friend, not by lying to yourself, but by choosing words that encourage growth instead of shutting it down. Another powerful shift is learning to separate failure from identity. Most people make a silent mistake. They don't say, "That attempt failed." They say, "I am a failure." Those two sentences may sound similar, but they create completely different realities. One describes an event, the other becomes a personal identity. Positive thinkers understand something important. Failure is information. It tells you what didn't work. It shows you where to adjust. But it does not define who you are. Another simple but powerful practice is learning to ask a different question when something goes wrong. Most people ask, "Why does this always happen to me?" But this question leads the mind into a dark place. A better question is, "What can this situation teach me?" Or even, "What is still possible from here?" These questions open the door to new possibilities. And slowly, something surprising begins to happen. Your mind stops seeing obstacles as the end of the road. It begins seeing them as part of the road, and this shift creates something extremely powerful. Hope. Hope is not naive optimism. Hope is the belief that effort still matters. Hope is the belief that the next step could still lead somewhere better. And when a person regains hope, even in small amounts, their behavior begins to change. They try again. They explore new paths. They take chances they once avoided, and little by little, their life starts moving in a different direction. Not because everything suddenly becomes easy, but because their thinking finally stopped working against them. And throughout history, some of the most remarkable transformations began exactly this way. Not with perfect conditions, not with certainty, but with one person choosing to believe that their story was not finished yet. A story about the power of changing your thinking several years ago. There was a man named Daniel. By most definitions of society, Daniel was not a successful man. At 35 years old, his life felt like a long list of things that hadn't worked out. He had tried starting a small business once. It failed. He had applied to dozens of jobs. Most of them never called back. He had been in a relationship he truly believed would last, but it ended in a quiet and painful breakup. And slowly, without even realizing it, Daniel developed a belief about himself. A belief many people quietly carry. Maybe I'm just not the kind of person things work out for? So he stopped expecting much. He still worked. He still woke up every morning. But something inside him had grown tired. Not physically tired, emotionally tired. The kind of tired that comes from believing that no matter what you do, things probably won't change. One evening after work, Daniel was sitting alone in his small apartment. The room was quiet, except for the sound of rain hitting the window, and like many nights before, his mind began replaying the same thoughts. You should have done better. Other people your age have their life figured out. Maybe you missed your chance. But that night, something small happened. Not dramatic, not life-changing in the moment. Just a simple realization. Daniel noticed something. All day long, his mind had been speaking to him like an enemy. Every mistake was magnified. Every effort was dismissed. Every possibility was doubted. And for the first time, he asked himself a strange question. What if the biggest thing holding me back is the way I think about myself? That question stayed with him. The next day, nothing in his life had magically changed. His job was the same. His problems were still there. But he made one quiet decision. He would stop speaking to himself like someone who had already lost. Instead of saying, "This will probably fail," he began saying, "Let's see what happens if I try." Instead of thinking, "I'm terrible at this," he tried thinking, "I'm still learning." At first, it felt unnatural, almost fake, but he kept doing it anyway. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. And slowly, something unexpected began to shift. Daniel started taking chances again. He applied for opportunities he would have ignored before. He started learning new skills in his spare time. He met new people, not because life suddenly became easy, but because his thinking stopped convincing him to quit before he even started. A year later, his life looked different. Not perfect, but moving, growing, expanding. And one day, while walking home after work, Daniel had another realization. The biggest change in his life hadn't been luck. It hadn't been talent. It hadn't even been opportunity. The biggest change had been something invisible. He stopped believing that his past failures defined his future. And once that belief disappeared, possibility finally had space to appear. The quiet power that can change your life. There is a powerful truth that many people discover very late in life. Your thoughts are not just passing ideas inside your mind. They are the lens through which you experience the world. Two people can face the same difficulty and live completely different lives afterward. One person sees the difficulty and thinks, "This proves I can't do it." Another person sees the same difficulty and thinks, "This is part of the process." The situation is the same, but the story they tell themselves is different. And that story eventually shapes everything. Their confidence, their courage, their willingness to try again. Positive thinking does not guarantee that life will always go your way, but it does something just as important. It keeps the door open. The door to new chances, the door to growth, the door to possibilities that negative thinking would have closed before they even appeared. Because when the mind constantly expects failure, it quietly stops searching for opportunity. But when the mind allows the possibility of success, it begins noticing doors that were always there. That is the quiet power of positive thinking. It doesn't change the entire world overnight. It changes the way you move through the world. And sometimes, that small shift becomes the beginning of a completely different life. So if today you feel tired, if life has disappointed you more times than you can count, if your mind has been telling you that maybe your best days are already behind you, remember this. Your past experiences may have shaped your thinking, but they do not have to define your future. You are allowed to try again. You are allowed to grow. You are allowed to believe that your story is still unfolding. Because sometimes the most powerful change a person can make is simply deciding that their mind will no longer be the place where their dreams quietly disappear. And maybe the most important thought you can carry with you today is this: your life will always move in the direction of your strongest thoughts. So choose them carefully. Choose them with courage. And most importantly, choose the ones that allow your future to remain bigger than your past. If this message spoke to something inside you, take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments. Someone else might need to hear the same reminder today. And if you believe in building a stronger mind and a better life, consider subscribing and joining this journey with us. Because sometimes, one new way of thinking is all it takes to begin a completely new chapter.